Hello, everyone. Thank you for joining us. My name is Daryl Urbanski, your host as always. And today we are joined by David Cooper, a distinguished leader in the energy sector with over 25 years of expertise in driving sales and operational excellence. His career is dedicated to delivering high-value solutions across various regional markets, optimizing operations, and enhancing customer experiences to meet financial targets. David's extensive background includes strategic customer management, B2B marketing, and developing enthusiastic, high-performance teams committed to excellence and innovative, sustainable solutions. As a seasoned professional, David leverages his vast experience to grow key accounts, spearhead new opportunities, and ensure the delivery of impactful energy solutions tailored to client needs. I asked David to join us here today to share his story and how we can all become more excellent in sales and operations. David, thank you so much for joining us today. How are you doing?
Very good, thank you. Thank you for the invite. It's good to be here.
Yeah, it's good to have you. And so I always like to start with this question. While we get into your career and what you've learned and mistakes made and lessons learned, how did you even get started? Is this like a family path? Did your parents work in the energy sector or in sales and operations? Is this sort of like a generational trade or?
Not at all, not at all. Dad was a fitter and turner towards the end of his career in the mining industry in UK, in Cornwall. South Property Tin Mine, one of was the last operating tin mine in Cornwall. So Dad worked there. Mum was a teaching support aide at a local primary school. I actually started my career as an electrical apprentice. Left school at the age of 6 after an apprenticeship with a local contractor, doing a variety of things. And I think that was really the kickstart, if you like, was that apprenticeship experience where we were across a variety of customers. Whereas a lot of contractors, certainly electrical contractors, have their lane that they operate in, whether that be domestic electrics or industrial or commercial or whatever. The company that I joined did a vast array of all of it. So I got exposure then to face-to-face with customers, so in the domestic realm, but also with companies and managerial people within business. That was really the kickstart to it. From there, it developed and I fell into sales more than anything. Got to the point where I was doing a lot of site work and traveling around doing installation, not even electric, morphed into the process industry quite quickly and traveling around site to site, and realized very quickly that having a really good technical person on site was the best sales strategy that you could ever have. And that I think, so an analogy that I've used on a number of occasions is if you buy yourself a brand new car and you drive out of the showroom and it's fantastic, it's everything you wanted, you're happy. But if you have the same experience, you drive out of the showroom and it breaks down 2 minutes down the road, it conks out. You phone up the garage and the garage says, do you know what, stay where you are, I'm going to be with you in 2 minutes. And they turn up and they give you keys to a brand new car to take and to loan. They take yours away, they get it fixed, and a couple of days later they call you back and say, yours is fixed, we're going to come and deliver it to you wherever you are. And they take away the loan car and they give you back your car. That experience of the problem with it solved and the customer service that goes around that gives an extra depth of your confidence in your buy. So I think that's a very strong piece of customer service.
Yes. I like how you talked about the service part. Maybe I'm as guilty as anyone else because I've been an online entrepreneur for over 10 years now, but it can be attractive I had a buddy, just actually maybe a really good example. I had a buddy, he had a coaching company. He was in Mexico, it's a little Spanish company. Actually, he was a client of mine. Anyways, he had this coaching company. He was doing really well, like really well. I'd say pushing 7 figures, perhaps. And he, on the side, had this surplus cash. He started getting into crypto and investing in that. And that became a passion of his. And I'll cut to the chase. He ended up founding the first legally registered crypto hedge fund in Mexico. And he managed to raise something like $700,000 from other people. And this was growing. I think at its peak, it grew to $4 million. And so he closes down his company. He lets all his staff go. And this was against my advice. Not that I know everything, but I know that there's real value in being connected to people, the face-to-face, the delivering of the service. I had a different friend, I'm taking a bit of a side trip here. Different friend of mine, he's got a membership program with 5,000 subscribers. And I said, Jermaine, that's a form of security people don't appreciate. If tomorrow the US dollar collapsed, these people would pay you in potatoes. You know what I mean? There's 5,000 of them. That is a form of life insurance that people don't. So with my buddy, Louis, I said, I really think you should keep the company going. Like maybe be less involved, okay, but I'm worried if you're gonna leave this serving people to, I know how the numbers on the screen work. And sure enough, the crypto cycle went and he went through some really tough times and he had to go back and rebuild. And now we're entering at the time of recording another bull run in crypto. And I talked to him maybe 3 weeks ago and he's just gonna run a bunch of events in different cities at break even or even a small loss just to keep the flow in the business going. I'm never gonna let this business go. His lesson was, I'm never gonna let this business go. I'm just gonna maybe just do the things that I love most and focus on be more of an investor type thing. But it was that.
It sounds to me like he's actually got the skill. So one of the other things that I like to refer to is the fact that people buy people. And if I go back to my new car analogy again, if you're going to go out and you buy a new car, whatever brand your favorite is, and the guy at the sales room is arrogant, not providing service,
right?
And I'll refrain from using him, but he's not your kind of person. That's fine. You can go down the road and you can buy exactly the same car somewhere else.
Yep.
People buy people. And I think you've got to be personable. You've got to be able to have those conversations with individuals.
Yep.
And that's really what derives value.
Yeah, I agree 100% because it's that people want confidence in the end result that they're going to get. And I think that by knowing someone, they know that not everything is perfect. And so the quality, it's like they say contracts with clients. This is something I've had to learn that you can have all the contracts you want with clients, but a contract is only as good as your relationship with the client or your ability to enforce it. And enforcing it with an unwilling client can be very painful for everyone.
Well, also, how many contracts actually get reviewed through the life of the contract? You tend to do a review of the contract and everybody negotiates and you get to a point where the contract's signed. It then gets put in a drawer somewhere and never looked at unless there's a problem. So really it's the relationship with that customer and you work within the spirit of the contract rather than actually referring back to the contract most of the time.
Right, 100%, 100%. And this goes to needing to play long-term games with long-term people. And that it's almost like a marriage. Concessions maybe need to be made or adjustments. So I love that. It sounds so simple, but there's just really profound wisdom in some of this stuff. Like there really is. There's a lot. Yeah.
No, there's a lot there. And I think with regard to that contracting piece, I think the concept of win has to be there because if it's not win-win, then you've got a win-lose or a lose-win. Somebody's losing.
Right.
And that's never good.
It doesn't get you repeat business. You might be able to pay someone short term, but you're not going to be able to. And especially in today's transparent age, I love that Greg Glassman, founder of CrossFit, said this in a talk. Ultimately, markets are unknown and unknowable. And I explained that. Talk about buying a car. If I ask you how many people are in market to buy a car today, you could look at keyword searches, stuff. There's indicators, but ultimately it's unknown and unknowable.
It's data. Yep.
And it's fluctuating constantly. Sure. But everyone can recognize excellence. And so if your focus is simply on excellence in solving a problem for people, that can shine through good economic times.
I think solving a problem, that became part of the mantra in my earlier career, where we were promoting very high value customer solutions. And the value add there is working with the customer to understand what the pain points are. And once you can understand those pain points, you can work with the customer. Maybe your solution is not the right thing for them. And that's okay as well. I think there's a huge amount of trust and a huge amount of credibility that comes from being able to sit in front of a customer and say, do you know what? I understand what your problem is now because we've had these conversations. I don't think I've got the right solution for you. You probably need to go down this other track. And that's okay too. Because the next time they've got a problem, they're going to pick up the phone and go, do you know what? I've got this problem. I know Dave's going to be honest with me. I'll give him a call and let's have a chat. Let's see where we go.
I love that. Can you speak to B2B marketing a little bit? Because if people buy people, and especially if you're selling, you talk about a high value, maybe it's a high ticket item. What's your advice to someone maybe starting out or struggling? Like they've got something, they're trying to sell it B2B, but people buy people and they got to drive sales. They can't wait for the world to beat a path to their door. How do you?
You've got so in preparation for this interview, Darryl, I actually have listened to a bunch of your previous guests and enjoyed many of them. And I can't remember the name of the person that it was, but somebody said, maybe it was you actually, that said that if you've got 100 customers, if you talk to 100 customers, you'll only ever have a maximum of 100 customers. If you talk to 1,000, then you'll have a maximum of 1,000. That really rung true with me. I truly believe that you've got to get out there. You've got to be meeting people. You've got to be networking. You've got to be going to events and be seen to be in the market, have that relevance, have that connection with the other people that are in the same sphere. So you've got to be out there. You've got to be knocking on doors, as an old leader of mine used to say. You've got to be out there knocking on doors.
Yeah. You can't do business sitting on your ass.
You can't. And COVID broke the world. And I think there's a lot of people that hold the opinion now that, we've proven that we can do this from sitting on a beach in the Philippines. And maybe some businesses you can. But there are an awful lot of businesses that you can't. You really need to be in front of people. And there is something much more personal, much more base about having a face-to-face meeting, shaking hands, having a coffee together, having a beer together, whatever that might be. That personal connection, which I don't think you can do electronically. You certainly can't do it by sending emails. It's a little bit better on the telephone, but I think we've got to a stage socially where we avoid the telephone now. It's all emails or text messages or whatever. So you don't get those inflections in people's voices and you actually hear and make those personal connections.
I think that's really, and I can attest, I had a couple of tough years. I had a golden ticket. I felt like I had a golden ticket in my career because I'd worked with one client and helped them do 1.6 million in sales in under 8 months, over 3 million in sales, including the back-end sales team, the company as a whole. And after leaving them, being there about 2 years, I went and had repeat success with 2 other clients. And so at this point, I felt like I had a golden ticket. I had people lining up to work with me. And when I moved to the Philippines, I felt, there's time zone differences, but there's a window where we're both awake and it'll be around their dinner time. I think my head was full of how great I am, perhaps. And when I went and I moved to a remote Palawan. It's a honeymoon destination. There's tons of places you can't get cell signal, let alone internet. It is super remote. And I really struggled to continue to do what I did before because I didn't have a full 8-hour day to chat with people and to network and to socialize with everyone. And when you work with CEOs and the C-suite executives, they don't want to do calls around their dinner time or after dinner, right? They want you to be there either at the start of their day or whatever. And I said, maybe I was
their schedule.
So there's real power in that. I think, I don't remember who said that either, but I really like that. If you talk to 100 people, the max you can have is 100 customers. If you talk to 1,000, the max you can have is 1,000. I really like this because a lot of people want this inbound marketing, and the people do make it work, but it's not the same as going and you talk about knocking on doors. I can decide to go knock on 100 doors today. I can decide to go visit 10 offices today. It's the same with paid ads. If you can make paid ads, the concept is really simple. I advertise, people buy. Or I advertise and people raise their hands and some of them buy. But making it work is incredibly difficult. But if you can get it to work, you can literally decide, let's buy 300 customers this month. Let's go buy 300 new customers.
I think becomes a little bit different when we're talking about the B2B space, where you're talking about large ticket project sales.
Yeah.
You need to go in, so you need to connect with the buyer, you need to connect with the technical lead. It's very possible that the environmental person in a customer's organization has a power of veto on a particular piece of equipment. So you need to know who that is. You need to know what their drivers are. And there are these multitude of touch points within a client's organization that all have a say or an influence on whether your product ticks enough boxes to move forward to the next. Yeah, that's before you ever get to price, really.
Right. So if you had a new person coming to work under you, would there be a checklist for them? Would there be a quota? Listen, you need to go to this many events a quarter, you need to go, and what would you, again, for the person that's listening?
It would be nice if it was that simple, Daryl. I think it's one of those things that it's not going to be the same organization to organization. Yeah, the customers that you're dealing with, each customer organization is going to be different. So I think the advice would be understand, try and put yourself in the place of the customer's organization that you're dealing with. What are going to be their likely drivers? What do they care about? I think it was Steve Jobs that said that customers don't care about your product, they care about what your product can do for them.
Yeah, yeah.
I believe that was Steve Jobs. And I think that's very true also. At the end of the day, I can buy a widget from any number of companies, but if there's one product out there that does a little bit more and is more aligned with solving a particular problem that I have, that has more value to me. So I think you're absolutely right that you've got to be open to thinking from the customer's point of view. And I think that's even more relevant when it's a B2B large ticket sale, where you've got multiple touch points, you've got multiple people that can veto. Not necessarily, there's very rarely multiple people that can say yes to a major ticket sale.
But there's multiple people that.
But there are generally multiple people that can say no.
Yeah,
that's absolutely true.
I remember long before, because now lots of people see these electronic massage chairs in malls and stuff that are coin operated. I lived in Japan and Tokyo for 3 years, and they didn't have those yet, but they had the chairs. And there was one in this strip mall by my house, and we would go out of our way to walk through the strip mall to sit in it, for my girlfriend and I at the time, to sit in it for 20 at the end of a long day for going home. And I ended up working with Panasonic and getting to buy one in Canada at cost. And I got some tech guys to finagle this thing to put a coin operated meter on it. And I did the math based off of foot traffic, and the place that needed to be was on the university campus in my small hometown of 100,000 people. And it was like sales with 7 different committees. And it was exactly that. There was 2 people that could say yes, and about 50 that could say no. And I bought so many lunches and did so much schmoozing, and the project just went nowhere. I ended up just renting it out to different people with chronic ailments. Yeah, anyways, so I know exactly what you're talking about.
I think the learning there as well is, if you're up against a number of people that can say no, you need to understand, you need to be empathetic as to what their point of view is, what they're likely to say no to. And when you're planning for conversations, you're doing meeting plans, you need to make sure that you've got an idea of what are the questions they're going to ask, what are their objections likely to be, and from my company or my product's point of view, what's the solution? How do I address that so what question or what if question? What's my proposition? So you're going into those situations with an appreciation of their point of view and a solution that presents your product in the best light.
Sounds like a lot of people.
Or your service.
You need a lot of people skills. You need to also be tenacious. You also need to have really clear and in-depth product knowledge. Also be aware of the client's issue. and getting them to tell you. That's something I think that's really important for people to, what's the difference between window shopping and shopping? When you window shop, you don't touch anything, you don't try it on. And so if you can't get people to open up and share with you, that in itself is a huge hurdle. How are you gonna, right?
And that comes back to the trust issue, right? So if you're not, and people buy people. So if you can't get in front of a person and you can't build that trust, how are they ever going to trust you enough to tell you what their problem is?
How does that work across cultures? You're based in Singapore. You're obviously, maybe you were born and raised there, but you don't look Singaporean.
Raised in the southwest of the UK, and then moved to Australia, spent 15 years in Australia, and now in Singapore. But being in the oil and gas industry, it was pretty multicultural right from the start. Yeah, and that's a challenge. I think as an industry, the oil and gas or the energy industry is much broader based when it comes to multicultural content. We've dealt with a bunch of different people from different areas of the world. I spent a couple of years working for a Chinese company. That was an eye-opener. And you're absolutely right. The cultural differences are huge. So I think that comes back to that empathetic approach as well, where you have to accept that there are cultural differences. You have to try to accommodate those as best you can, and just be a human being. That's really the best advice I would give. Be a human being. Be yourself. Be personable. Be approachable. Be willing to be self-effacing, and do your best not to insult or challenge other people's cultures.
Which it really sounds like it's a lot of personal development. You really have to shape your character. You can't go in there. You might be able to get away with things in your culture, but when you go to another culture, it could be atrocious, whatever you're doing. I remember, I lived in Tokyo 3 years. It took me a year and a half to figure out how often I was offending people day to day, just being a happy-go-lucky Canadian and like storming around. They would never say it because, the culture, and they would just brush off like a foreigner, but it does create a barrier. And you talked about the culture difference working in a Chinese company. I'm curious, can you speak to some of those?
It was definitely an eye-opener. It was an eye-opener. I spent a lot of time through the couple of years that I was there reporting directly to board level management and really advising them. So I held a position of international sales director for that business. And a lot of that time was spent explaining to senior members of the business why in one place or another you can't do that. That's not acceptable. We need to go this way. That was quite, so I guess from that cultural point of view, that was quite an eye-opener, quite a learning experience.
Yeah, I remember I went to Japan. Somebody asked me before I went, what about culture shock? And I was like, culture shock, smolture shock. We're all humans. We all have hair and skin and eyeballs and hearts and moms and dads. No, culture shock is real, yo. It is.
It's a thing.
It's as real as fluctuations in accents and slang and dialects from one part of the same country to another. It is so real. That's fantastic. So you've already mentioned some, but to really hit the nail on the head, what skills or behaviors do you think are most important for someone in today's day and age working in sales, let's say, that they need to improve and develop?
No, I think, so personally for me, I think personal development is very important. Being willing or being able to identify where you might have shortcomings, and then being willing to apply yourself to go and work on those.
Right.
And that's not easy. That takes I think pre-interview, we spoke a little bit about the aging process. And I think some of that comes with age, some of that comes with experience across business, but also in life as general. You realize that there are things that I can do, there are some things that I can't do. Yeah. And if you can rationally look at those things and come up with an idea of the things that you can't do, you can then identify what you'd need to do in order to improve on those areas. So I think that's very important. I personally, I've never really considered myself as a salesperson. More, I guess I differentiate between sales and business development. So I'm able to conceptualize how a business might benefit from an application. And that becomes the conversation that I have with people within that business. And maybe they buy, maybe that results in a sale, but I'm not selling. I'm not trying to sell you a product because I have a target to sell that product. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
It's kind of a flip on the
You look at you're more looking
terminology.
at it seems as a matchmaker, trying to almost like a matchmaker would, where someone says, all right, I've got, if you're whatever, a dating coach or something, you've got a pool of, or you're putting, I actually never been to one, but say you're putting together some sort of singles event. And what you're trying to do is figure out, how do we find out who fits best with who? And part of that is communicating, and part of that is having difficult conversations with people. I think that's part of it too. And I think just hearing what you're talking about, something that really comes out through your talk, is how much you emphasize and focus on them and putting yourself in their shoes versus really just trying to get and I think that trips up so many people when they're so focused on themselves that they can't see the forest for the trees, so to speak. And so really
they focus on the product too. So many salespeople are purely driven by selling that product and what it means to them, whether that be commissions or they're not going to hit targets or whatever that might be. So their focus is on, I've got this product, I need you to buy this product. And it's about you buying this product and about me because I need to sell the product.
And and when you get turned down, it's a personal offense because I'm the dancing bear.
Absolutely. Yeah.
They didn't buy me. People buy people. They didn't buy me. I'm so offended.
Yeah, absolutely. But if you can flip the mindset and get to the point of, I'm here providing a service. And what is that service? That service is matchmaking. And when you're talking about that matchmaking process, you've got the customer, which is one party to the matchmaking, and your product or service, which is the other party to that matchmaking. And if they're never going to fit, if they're never going to align, they're never going to align.
Yep.
If there's a common ground in the middle somewhere, and you can work and you can negotiate to where there's a fit, great. But if there's never going to be a fit, don't waste your time.
So it sounds like you have to get really good at asking the right question, because it's not just networking and meeting, it's networking and meeting and being able to ask the questions to open. I remember, I think it was Gary Bensavenga. He had said that there's two parts to every sale. There's opening the sales conversation and closing it. And so that's part of where you have to meet and establish some sort of rapport, but then there has to be some sort of way to ask the right questions to open the sales discussion to prospect, to see, is there something for us to talk about here about this, or maybe not.
Absolutely. And actually that analogy you used about opening the sale and closing the sale makes me think of something that somebody once said to me, which was there's three sides to every story. There's your side, there's my side, and the truth is somewhere in the middle. And if you can accept the fact that whatever the situation is, you're seeing it through your set of unique filters. I'm looking at it through my set of unique filters. And if you can accept that there are unique filters that color the way that we see that problem, then you can start to say, okay, what if I remove these filters and I can see it from the other person's point of view, or I can see it in a more clear setting to frame the problem so I can understand the other person's point of view.
I love that. So long term, having been in this industry and in this field for so long, what are some of the habits? And I'm trying to get like brass tacks. Is there a daily habit? Is there a weekly habit? Are you big on every day waking up and spending 10 minutes on LinkedIn to connect? What are the habits that you feel that have, helped you and the others that are under you be most successful?
I think so. I do use LinkedIn quite a bit. So I like to get onto the LinkedIn profile a couple of times a week to make sure that I'm linking with people that are doing stuff in related areas, that whole networking piece. So yes, I think that's important. I think the key thing for me, and again, it comes back to credibility, to trust and people buying people. So the key thing for me is if I get an email, I'll respond to it. If somebody sends me or pings me on Teams or Skype, I'll respond to it, because there's nothing worse. And for me, it's a common courtesy. Part of that building relationships is building trust, building credibility, and having a respectful dialogue. It's okay to disagree, as long as you're not disagreeable in the process. But maintaining that dialogue, making sure that you are responding to people. And if you say to somebody, look, this was one of the things that I found with the Chinese company, was the culture of pleasing the customer. And the answer always had to be yes. Oh, yes, absolutely. Here's the answer. And it wasn't necessarily accurate. My approach in that instance is it's okay to say, I don't know.
Right.
Great question, Daryl. I don't know the answer. I'm going to make a note. I'm going to come back to you by the end of play tomorrow. I'll get an answer for you. And then following up and coming back before the end of play tomorrow, or whatever time frame you've put on yourself, actually following up and coming back and saying, hey, Daryl, that question you asked me when we met last week, I've got an answer for you. And I think I don't know if it's a social thing now, that we tend to forget that piece. With so many social media, there's so many different ways to connect with people. It's very easy to lose track of, I owe so-and-so a response. So that would be my key learning, my key habit, is to make sure that if an email or a response to a message that is time bound, get on and respond to it. Don't leave it hanging.
That's powerful. I think that's really real. I think that's a really good tip. Where do you see the future of things going? Now there's AI, there's chatbots, there's all this stuff. Where do you see things in 5, 10 years? How do you feel this might change?
It's the Terminator movie, isn't it? Where's it all going? Who knows? I think the Internet of Things has been around for a while now, and we've got it of so many different devices. Is it powerful change industry? It will have effects for sure. I don't think just yet that it's gonna change or severely impact I might be wrong there. I was about to say I don't think it'll impact the sales piece. I think it could. I think it could drive the other way. I think, or I wonder, maybe rather than think, I wonder if the emergence of artificial intelligence and videos and the ability to chat with bots when you connect with a customer's website, all those things, or a supplier's website. If you're a supplier, or if you're a customer and you're going to a supplier's website and you end up interacting with a bot, and you can buy, or it can go through the sales using AI, I think there are certain elements that will go that way. But I wonder if it'll drive things the other way as well, where people will go, do you know what? I'm over talking to computers. I want to talk to a person. So that people by people thing comes back in, where now I do want people to come into the office. I do want to sit down with a person, because what they're saying, I know they're saying. Right. And I know it's there, rather than AI, where you don't know if it's a person, you don't know if it's something that person's actually said.
Yeah, you're hitting on something. It's making me, because I always look at AI and these things like a tool. There's been so many. The spreadsheet was revolutionary when it came out, right? And people don't realize
Absolutely, yeah.
And Excel and Google Sheets, that was massive when it came out. That you could put in functions and formulas and it would auto-calculate. Somebody had to do the math before. They had a paper and pen and a ledger, and if they didn't scratch it down, it didn't exist. So that you could put a formula in a computer and it would calculate this for you. And it was a complete game changer. And same with calculators. There's movie of a team of mathematicians that did the calculations to launch rovers to the moon and put a person on the moon, like a team of women that were the smartest in math. There's a movie about this. And then the calculator came out. And I just feel like a lot of the stuff, we build tools and they're tools. And I feel like what separates, because people talk about artificial general intelligence, AGI, and it's an interesting concept, because I think it really starts coming down to a spiritual question. And I'm not trying to take this conversation that way, but why do people prefer to engage with people? Like a chatbot can answer your original questions. It depends. If it's an impulse level purchase, then chatbot might be good. If I'm trying to choose between which whey protein to buy, chatbot might be fine. But if I'm spending a significant portion of my life saving, what is this saying? I don't forget who said it, but it was like, a machine cannot be held accountable. Therefore, a machine must never make the final call, or something like who's the person I can throttle if this goes wrong, right? Like this.
I think too, it comes back to that trust piece. If you're making a significant life purchase, whether that be a new car or a home or whatever, I think most people take advice, and you take advice from people that you know, people that you trust.
Yep.
So you would sit down with your partner and you say, okay, we've seen this house. What do you think? I think it's a yes. And you have a conversation, and that really does something fundamentally inside you to say, okay, I'm happy. I've had my thoughts ratified. I'm happy to move ahead in this direction. You can't really do that with a computer, or we feel that we can't do that with a computer.
Yeah.
Now, in a B2B context, I think that still exists. And if you can build that level of trust, you can get your customer to sit down with you and say, hey, Dave, what do you think about this? And if you're honest and credible, and you know what you're talking about in that context, you can not so much influence, but you can be that person of trust that ratifies the customer's desire for a purchase. And I think that's very powerful. I think inherently we all want that. We want to know that, or we want to believe that somebody else that we trust agrees that we're doing the right thing.
Well, I think it comes down to an innate need for shared experiences. Like venting is a real thing. Part of why I moved to the Philippines was, at first I came here for work purposes. And then I met someone when I was here, which wasn't my intent. And then I ended up moving here because I'd done well in my career. And I'd made a ton of money. And I'd done I speak 3 languages. I've traveled the world. But a lot of that stuff I did alone. And I really regret it. I am so grateful to have a wife and child, and we're working on another one, because now I have someone to share all these things of my life with. And so it comes back to, even if you have this super intelligent artificial thing, I don't know if there's going to be that same companionship.
Absolutely.
And that's, again, it comes back to this weird spiritual thing that you can kind of get hokey until if you're looking for proof of the fractal nature of the universe, there's no better example than people come out of other people. Like, that's people. Yeah.
Yeah, you said something that struck a bell with me there. You said about traveling around and not really having those connections. And I think one of the things that I found in my career is that I've traveled to a lot of different places, and I've been on the company dime, and you're there, you have a decent meal in a hotel, relatively decent bottle of wine, and you sit there with a nice meal and a book alone, and you've got nobody to enjoy it with. And that, to me, that's been something that's really resonated with me over probably the past 15 years, is I've been to all these places, but never actually gone and seen anything while I'm there, because I'm either working or I'm sat on my own in a hotel room.
Yeah.
And that's no fun.
So I don't know. I don't know if we're going to solve the world's problems in this call, but I feel like what I understand, and that what we come to an agreement on, is that all this technology, it's just another form of tool. If anything, we already are cyborgs. Like, you and I are in different, like, we're separated by an ocean.
Yeah.
And we're using our non-physical biological being to communicate together. So it's just another tool, and that we have to merge with it. And at the end of the day, it's still, all a company is a group of people that help another group of people, and they do it via a product or service.
That's right.
I think that's a really powerful thing.
But I think it's the people thing that we need to not forget, though, right?
Yeah.
We need to not forget the people, because at the end of the day, why are we doing all of this? Why is there any business?
Yeah.
I would hazard to say that there's no business out there that isn't in the service of people. Ultimately, we haven't got businesses out there that are servicing computers. There are, but we're servicing computers that service people. The end result is providing a service to people.
Yeah.
And we need to not forget that.
Yeah. I keep going back to this weird spiritual thing where I'm like, it's about people, because I always think about when I'm driving down, I'm saying about a lot. When I'm driving down the road, I often think and thank the people who spent days, weeks, or months in the hot sun slaving away to pave the road so I can get where I'm going in 20 minutes.
Absolutely.
Right? I heard this
in a well-conditioned car.
Joe Rogan said this years ago. He said, if I dropped you off in the woods with a Swiss Army knife and some matches, how long till you can come back to me with your own iPhone that you made from materials you found in the woods? Like we're all one. Like it's this weird, when do you become you? Are you, and then we don't need to go, but are you when the sperm meets the egg? Are you when your heart starts beating? Are you when you come out? Or are you in the coalescing series of events that had to cascade and come together at the right time in order?
The universe, absolutely, yeah.
Which then means that we are on the tip of the spear of thousands, if not millions of years of previous actions. Like our lives to the universe is like a wave to the ocean, and it's all happening simultaneously. While we're recording this, other people are moving all over. We're all like ants on the planet, and we all are like building to help each other.
And we're all stood on the shoulders of giants, right? Nobody got there on their own.
I love that. Dave, this has been great. This is maybe a call people may want to listen to more than once to make sure they get all the nuggets out of this. I think there's some really good, just timeless wisdom in here, and also maybe some comforting thoughts for people that may be uncertain about where the future is going. Is there anything I haven't asked you about that I should have asked you?
Not that I can think of. I think that your comment there about Joe Rogan's quote about going into the woods, that struck a chord, because that's something that I do love to do, is taking my survival knife and going out into the woods and that side of my life. And in my community service side of my career, if you like, I'm a scout leader. I've been a scout leader for 20 some years. So leadership is something that I'm very passionate about, but maybe we'll save that for the next conversation.
Sure. Yeah. Okay. Yeah, we can definitely talk about that. That's fantastic. And if people want to reach out, they have questions, if they want to connect with you personally, what are some of the best ways for them to get in touch?
Probably LinkedIn is the most reliable way to reach out.
Okay. Yeah. Okay. So go find him. He's David Cooper 75. If you know the URL, LinkedIn, but David Cooper, you know, we've got the right guy. He's in Singapore with George International and the Cornwall College Group. David, thank you so much for joining us today. It's been an honor and a pleasure. This was a great conversation. Thank you for coming and sharing with my audience and I, knowing that you have your own family, your own direct reports, your own staff, your own followers that you could be spending your time on. So thank you for coming and sharing with my audience and I. You are appreciated.
Thank you, Daryl. It's been a pleasure.